everyone. It's been a while, has it not? And I do apologise that we've not been here with the Doctor Will See You Now since before Christmas. But there was such a thing as end of semester exams and all that correcting that has to go on. And then the start of a new semester and all that that brings with it. Anyway, the Doctor is back. And the Doctor has a lineup for the start of our time together for 2023. Quite spectacular. And might I add, this first author for 2023, well, please, if you like darkness, sinister, malevolence, this is the author for you. Everybody, I'd like you to welcome into the consultation Ronnie Turner. Ronnie, hi, how are you?
Hello, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
It's an absolute joy. We'll talk about your writing in general, but the main focus of our conversation today is going to be your most recent book, which is called So Pretty, and published by the fab team at Arenda. Do you have a copy of it there with you?
I've got something a little bit exciting. I've just had some very beautiful bookmarks sent to me. So I don't know if you can
Oh,
see it there. Can you? Yeah, I think
oh, that's beautiful. Gosh,
I
that's
know they've
gorgeous.
literally just arrived this morning, and I thought, oh my gosh, I've got them a little pile of them with me right now. And they're wonderful.
They are absolutely beautiful. I mean, again, knowing, that's one. I mean, there's so many aspects about Arenda books that I love, but that eye for detail, it's
It's
just,
it's spectacular, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
The quality and the eye for detail is just phenomenal.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I'm so happy with them. It's really exciting to see. Got my own
I
book
know. I
back.
am glad we can share this moment with you. That's lovely. I wonder, could we could we go back to the beginning? Because I would imagine for many of our viewers and our listeners, they might not be aware of your writing. They might not have met you before. I know you've been at some festivals, but people might not have had a chance to meet you.
Yeah, of course.
What's
Yeah.
a wonderful person like you doing in such a sinister, grim, dark world of the crime fiction thriller? What drew you?
Oh, I've always really enjoyed sort of those darker stories. I mean, when I was growing up, I was reading a lot of Stephen King, so a lot of that sort of horror, very dark aspect of books. So I've always been quite drawn to it, and I've always been drawn to psychology as well and human nature. So that's something that I wanted to explore with So Pretty as well, and the two combined, I think work quite well together. Um,
Yeah, they do most definitely. I think, again, struck by that sense of how the Gothic, um, whilst it began its journey a few centuries back, but that the Gothic really works in contemporary writing. I mean, why do you think that is?
I think Gothic contemporary. I mean, we've got the sort of classics like Rebecca, haven't we, by Daphne du Maurier, and then we've got the slightly newer books like The Little Stranger by Sarah Waters. And I think that it's just I think it has an appeal because there's a fascination with darkness, and with that sort of gothic atmosphere. I mean, with So Pretty, I knew I wanted a sort of claustrophobic, very atmospheric setting. And I sort of stumbled upon Rye, which is near Sussex, and it was just the most perfect place for me to set the book, and I just loved it completely because it has that sort of motive of gothic fiction, that very sort of claustrophobic, you almost feel like you can't escape setting. So that's why I set it there.
Let's stay in Rye, if we may, or maybe we shouldn't stay in Rye, according to the atmosphere in your book. But you are originally from the southwest of England, though, is that correct?
Yes, so I've actually lived all over. I'm a little bit of a traveller at heart. But I grew up in Cornwall, a few different places in Cornwall, and
Yeah,
lived a couple different places in Devon. I've lived a couple different places in Dorset as well. So I'm a bit of a traveller. I go all over the place.
yeah, and
And,
so
yeah.
that the settling on Rye as the context for the novel. It's almost like which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Yeah, I know, I know. Um, I think what inspired Rye made the sort of perfect setting for the Curiosity Shop. But what inspired the Curiosity Shop is actually I used to live near Crediton in Devon, and
Yeah.
the Curiosity Shop is inspired by a very real establishment in Crediton. So it used to be a old building contractors. And now it's this sort of abandoned, crumbling builder, this old Tudor building, and it's got the name, which is still very clear above the door, Berry and Vincent. So that's
Oh,
what
wow.
inspired, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
inspired the curio shop. And I kept the name and everything. And I think because I've traveled around a little bit, there's all these sort of antique shops and curiosity shops sort of scattered around the coastal towns in the southwest, and I've been in so many of them. And quite a few I have had a bit of a sort of dark ambiance, and I felt like I shouldn't be in there, and that I'm being watched, and that there's all these sort of strange items and artifacts on display, and it's just a feeling that you shouldn't be in there almost. So that inspired So Pretty as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's stay in those shops if we may, and the ones that you visited, variety. Is there any one particular item or artifact that you remember, with even greater dread, or that you thought, maybe I must bring into the novel, or this is something that just will stick with me for that sense
Oh,
of
yeah.
grimness?
Oh, definitely. It's actually the dolls for me, the sort of porcelain dolls in these cute.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
creep me out, Jackie. I'm
Mm, I'm
terrible
with
with
you on
them.
that. I can't go in
Oh,
them because of that. They
they're
really, yeah,
terrifying.
yeah,
Absolutely terrifying. I feel like they're about to jump off the shelf and just grab me. They're very spooky.
yeah,
But yeah, I think I've brought the dolls into the story quite a bit really, because they really do genuinely creep me out.
yeah, yeah. And coming back to that, that sense of the likeness of human beings,
Mm.
and looking at them, and again, we were talking a little bit about the monstrous and the monstrous in humanity. So we'll come back a little bit later on in our conversation, and explore your thoughts on the monstrous. This is your second book. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. So my first one was published digital first, with HU Digital, and then this is my second one with Arenda, which is really exciting.
Without a doubt, without a doubt. Now, the experience, though, because they always say, do they not, that that second book, it can be tricky, and each book has a process of its own. How did this compare? Not content-wise, not whether it's a better book in that sense, but the process. Was it very different from the first to the second?
The process was, it was quite similar because we had, the structural edit, and then the line by line edit. So that was quite similar, really. But I think it's a very different experience when it's published in print, rather than digital first. Because my last one was just digital, with the option of print on demand. So it's been a very different experience for this one, but it's been wonderful. It's felt very sort of organic and just really quite. There's been a little bit of serendipity to it, I think, because I actually met Karen, my publisher, when I was 16 or 17. Yeah, I was
Wow.
16 or 17. I was at the Penzance Lit Fest in Cornwall, and she was there doing a talk, and I just remember the whole room being in absolute awe. They were rapt because
Yeah.
Karen is an
Oh, yeah.
absolute powerhouse. um, and they were just in awe. I remember their faces. And I after she'd had her talk, I spoke to her a little bit, and then fast forward all these years later, I'm 24 now, and she's my publisher. So it's been a fun publication journey.
That is a most beautiful story. And again, for anybody watching or listening who, is considering writing and thinking it will never happen to me, it won't, just the patience or the time that it might take,
Mm,
and that you actually, that circular thing, that you come back to the person that maybe at that point really inspired you
yeah,
to think, I want to do this, and then you
yeah.
get to work with them. And
I
that's
know it's been amazing, amazing journey. And I think there has been a little bit of serendipity to it, because it almost feels like it's meant to be. To be honest, it's been really wonderful, and
Mm-hmm.
I've loved the journey. I've been working hard on it, on writing books, because I've been writing books since I was tiny, very poor ones, very poor ones. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey, and I'm really glad that Karen's my publisher. I'm thrilled to be with Arenda, and with the Arenda family.
And we think it's amazing. You talk about writing, from childhood, um, but you also talked about being a traveler, that you felt, so could you see yourself, I don't know, in more ancient times, roaming around the land with stories to tell?
Yes, definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I can sort of imagine myself as a little bit of a character sort of roaming around on the moors, very sort of Du Maurier, Bronte-esque, and coming up with stories. Yeah, definitely. Because I've lived in quite a lot of rural spots within Cornwall and Devon.
Yeah,
So often I have done that. I've sort of taken the dogs out on walks, and sort of done plot thinking and coming up with stories. So yeah, definitely.
yeah, yeah. You've transported me, but we should come back to So Pretty and the way that you transport the reader in this novel to confront some very dark aspects, and you have the most beautiful way of writing such darkness. It feels like you should be looking away, but you can't take your eyes off the text because of the way you conjure things, and the way you describe things. Um, so thank you for such an experience. Let's talk about the characters that you bring to us here, and in particular, if we can start with Teddy and Ada. Just give us a little potted history of
Yeah.
who they might be and why you chose, sort of like this configuration of characters.
Yeah, of course. So, Teddy is the son of a serial killer, and he's been sort of trying to run from his past, and hide his identity, keep his anonymity within these new places he's traveling to. And when he sort of arrives in Rye, he takes work at this curiosity shop called Berry and Vincent. And within the village, the town of Rye, rather, he sort of is met with these warnings, and all these very grim stories circulating about the shop and about its proprietor. He's sort of warned off, and he's told, "Don't go near. Heed me, and stay far away from this shop." But Teddy, is drawn in by the mystery of it, and he wants to unearth its secrets, which go back 50 years to a family that disappeared. And then with my other character, Ada, she's lived in Rye for 2 years now,
Mhm.
and she's a single mum. She's a little bit lonely. The townsfolk are very quite cold to her, quite cruel. And she's feeling that, and she's feeling very left out of the community, and very lonely. All the only person she has for company is her little boy Albie. And I wanted to explore, the sort of loneliness for these two characters, because that is what draws them together. The need for contact, for a relationship, for conversation. And I think that's what brings them together, and that's what draws them. And then, steadily the story gets a little bit
Yeah,
dark.
yeah, and readers or listeners, if you like your audiobook, can I just say, yeah, we're not going to say any more on that, but just how they come and what happens. We'll leave that one there. A couple of things though that I wondered, the way that the village is about this shop, don't go there. You really don't want to be doing that. And I wondered why the village hadn't gathered together to remove, you know, this this menace that inhabits, not just physically, but psychologically. Everybody seems to be touched by this.
Mm.
Um, and I wonder why do you think they didn't do that? Would it not be easy to get rid of one man, Mr. Vincent, who we'll talk about in a minute, but Mr. Vincent and the shop,
Yeah.
rather than everybody be afraid and everybody be, a feeling of being in danger?
Well, there were a couple attempts that the townsfolk did make, and bring in the police trying to sort of out him from the town. But I think because Mr. Vincent, he's such a sort of dark and elusive character, and he's almost had a fear campaign against the townsfolk, and they are so frightened of his action and of him that they almost don't dare to in the end. They don't dare to try and get him out, so they've almost sort of just just gotten used to it and just evolved with it. But yeah, it's a scary prospect, isn't it? Of living with something like
Mm-hmm.
that, very, very close.
It made me think of how, coming back to like human psyche and how we deal with things, that very often something that we could so easily be free from
Mm,
if we took certain actions,
mm.
but we end up living with it because it's easier to adapt
Yeah, yeah.
maybe than it is to remove.
Mm.
You got me thinking very deeply about evil and what we do with it, and why we do what we don't do.
It's amazing what you can sort of adapt to, isn't it? It's
Mm,
what you evolve with and what you just you have to get used to.
mm,
I mean, I think that's what the townsfolk did with Vincent. They just, as the years passed, they just had to get used to it and live with it. And now he's become sort of a dark shadow within the village.
mm. Yeah. Now, 50 years. And I don't think it's giving anything away, because I think it's then that a family vanishes.
Hmm.
That's the thing, yeah. Um, were you very conscious of your choice of 50 years, or did you just stick a pin in a number and think, oh, well,
No, I was conscious of the decision with 50 years because I'm trying not to give too many spoilers away. But 50 years ago, the shop opened, and Bay and Vincent opened for business. So nearly as soon as it opened, the darkness sort of started seeping out into the town,
uh-huh.
and the family vanished 50 years ago, and that was where it all sort of began. So it was from the point of it opening, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I also think as well the idea of, it's a big enough span of history to think of different generations.
Mhm.
So it's not like something that happened a couple of years ago.
No, no, it's
It's
not. And it's with the townsfolk as well. I mean, the stories have sort of passed down through the generations, the trauma of what Vincent has done and what he's sort of put them through. So it's passed down through child to child, and it's become a sort of rumor, the vicious rumor that spreads around. And I think when Teddy comes into that, he just wants to get to the bottom of it.
mm, yes, Teddy and his curious nature. Um, as you said in at the start of our conversation about him, that of course, he has a past that he wishes to be free from. And just to come out of the novel, and do you think that idea of, oh, is it running away? And because that's a tricky phrase to use. But do you think going elsewhere can make change, or can aid change, or are we doomed to be who we are?
That's the sort of thing that I wanted to, because one of the themes in the book is nature versus nurture, which is sort of genetic inheritance versus environment, power of environment, and what can be carried through blood. So I wanted to explore that with the book because Teddy had he had a good upbringing. He was raised by a very loving mother, who cared for him and looked after him and loved him to bits. But his father was a serial killer. And with Ada, we have the reverse. So she was raised by successful, wealthy doctors, but her mother was quite cold to her, quite cruel. So I wanted to explore the contrast between the two of how nature can come out and be, it can come out and be either very, very grim, or you can move on and have a very, very wonderful life and have a light outcome rather.
Yeah, and again, I think there's somewhere in the novel where it's mentioned about, you know, having children, and you know, should should certain people be having children, and what that then carries on in
Mm,
generations. I mean, I think, I think your novel asks big questions about who we are, and how we function, and how should we behave. Sometimes, and again, I know for some people having children is not an easy thing, but sometimes it's sort of, that progression of, you meet somebody and you might get married, but then you have children, and it just, without stopping to think about what that means.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well,
it's
it's tricky, isn't it? Because I mean, Teddy is, he's the son of a serial killer, and I think the question will always sort of be in the back of your mind, are we going to have a mini version of Johnny Colne, and is history going to repeat itself? So that question's always going to be sort of in the back of your mind, isn't it?
It is, and it resonates lovely. I mean, I don't know if you've been watching, but as Happy Valley has come to an end, the series on ITV, that one of the questions there was whether the son of the serial killer would
Yeah, would
would
be a
you know
serial killer. Yeah,
yeah, what do we carry within us, and will it always manifest itself? Or if we're lucky enough, despite that aspect, if we have love, uh in a different form, maybe from someone else, that we can avoid. Yeah, I don't know, big
with it.
questions. Yeah.
I think it comes down to sort of the individual, doesn't it? And their experience in their sort of environment all the time. Because I mean, what might affect someone and have a really bad outcome might not affect another so much.
Yeah.
So it comes down to the individual, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So I'm gonna a little quote, and I think, is it from Emma, your agent? Is it Emma that's your
Emily,
agent?
Emily.
Emily, because it was in the bookseller. And it said that you, and I quote, well, that Ronnie excels in the weird, wonderful, and downright unsettling. And I have to agree. Yeah, without a doubt. Have you always had the desire to write this kind of thing? Or I'm going back to when you said when you were little, you always wrote. Was there always this element involved?
I mean, yeah, there's. I mean, as I said, when I was growing up, I read quite widely, and so I read, a lot of crime, a lot of horror, a lot of sci-fi. I was reading Arthur Conan Doyle. I was reading Agatha Christie, Sherlock Holmes. I was reading a lot of the classics when I was really young, and obviously there's murder and there's all these heinous crimes within these stories, and I think I was just really fascinated by it. I've always been really interested in human nature and psychology. I find it absolutely fascinating. So
Mm.
I knew I wanted to explore nature versus nurture in this story, and sort of plumb the dark depths of what that can mean. But yeah, I've always had a bit of a dark heart to my stories. My next one will be a little bit darker, perhaps.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because that's the great thing. It is a two-book deal, isn't it?
Yeah,
That you
yeah. That's
yes, wonderful, wonderful. So, and we'll come back, if we're allowed, just at the end, to have a little dip our toes a little bit into the next book, because we're here to celebrate this glorious novel. So pretty. Um, you, though, am I right in saying, I don't know if things have changed, but I read that you were a bookseller with Waterstones?
yeah. I'm still with Waterstones. I'm a senior bookseller, so I've worked there just over a year now. I started work as a Christmas temp,
Hmm.
and then they kept me on, and I was made full time, and then I got promoted to senior bookseller, and I just love it to pieces because I feel like being a Waterstones bookseller and being an author, they sort of go hand in hand. It's the perfect marriage of careers, and I get to talk about books all day long, Jackie. So I'm in
Yeah.
my element.
I'm surrounded. But do you get a special frisson though? Now especially, because yeah, it's your second novel, but as you say, this is the first one there out in print. You know, have you made sure that it's appearing everywhere? You
Oh
know,
yes, yes,
yes, good.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, it's all over my shop. It's in the window, it's on tables, it's on the shelf face out. It's all over the place. It's very exciting.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I'm making sure it's everywhere.
yeah. Again, I mean, everybody's different, and I think if I were in in, doing your job or both those professions, I might be a little daunted by seeing everybody else's books and thinking, oh, well, does mine have a place here?
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's, part of my age, of the am I okay? But do you feel the same way? Or can you look and say, my work, it fits here. It's good that it's here.
Well, I mean, I have my doubts. Is it good enough? Is it able to sort of go side by side with a bestseller and what have you? But I think being a bookseller, it's given me the sort of an eye for it, so I can see what works. Like, I mean, readers can tell me what works for them within a story and what doesn't, so I can sort of learn from readers
Yes.
at work, which is wonderful, and I think that's helped me immensely. And I also think that there's, in general, there's sort of a fascination with darkness. And I think there always will be.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's been a bit of a gold mine to tap, I think, with
Mm-hmm.
this one. I've enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Um, so if we can just move on to what is happening now, you said it was going to be a little bit darker. Are you still exploring nature nurture there, maybe in a different way, or are you taking a different tack on things?
It's still going to explore human nature, but it will have a different theme, this one. So it won't be nature versus nurture. It will be exploring the relationship between two sisters. It will still have, a very sort of isolated, dark setting. But it'll be different, but it'll be just as dark, if not maybe a little bit darker.
Mm, mm. We look forward to it. But back to So Pretty, I'm going to set you a difficult task, maybe,
Oh,
if that's
okay.
okay.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a little bit like the balloon debate, but let's say there you are out on the ocean, and sadly, you, Teddy, and Ada. I don't want to put the little boy in the boat. That's too tricky. That's too tricky. Um, but you've got Teddy and Ada there. You can only pick one.
Mm,
Okay, you can only save one,
mm.
and which might be hard to make that choice. But if you had to, who would it be and why?
I mean, it's very tricky, not to give away spoilers, but I mean, as the writer,
Mhm,
I found writing Teddy and Mr. Vincent, but Teddy very very interesting to write. There's a lot of material I could dive into because he is the son of a serial killer. So I
mhm.
find his story and his history really interesting. So as the writer, just because I'm very fascinated by it, I would save him. But as sort of a human being, I would save Ada because I feel quite drawn to her and quite close to her.
Mhm.
She's a lovely mother. She's got a little boy she's taking care of, and also if I were to save her, she would, she's the mum. She would be able to raise her little boy, wouldn't she?
Yeah, yeah,
So I think
yeah.
I would have to save Ada.
Thank you. I'm sorry that I had to put you in that position, but I was very intrigued by the out with the situation, talking about your choice as an author, and then talking about your choice as a person in that boat, and which choice would you make as the creator of this story. Was there anything that you thought about including
Mm,
in the novel, but in the end you decided not to for whatever reason?
mm.
Um, did did you have to leave certain aspects behind?
Yeah, well, actually, when I first started sort of developing the story, I for a moment I wondered about making it historical, and setting it in the past, because actually a few reviews that I've had since publication have said that it almost feels like they're reading historical crime, gothic crime,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I thought was really interesting. For a moment, I did consider it. So it nearly became historical crime, but it's not. It's quite suited to a modern gothic thriller. Um, um, so I think, yeah, it could have possibly been historical, but it's become a modern
yeah,
thriller.
yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm always intrigued. It's a bit like with the film, what ends up on the cutting room floor. Well,
Yeah, and what gets
I know it's
stripped
not maybe
back.
cut anymore, but yeah, what gets edited out, and what could have been, just like, yeah, but sadly it can't go. So yeah, that historical feel. Mm. Now, I also read in your bio that you have dogs.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I've got three. I've got three collies. I've
Mm.
got my two older girls, and then I've got my younger boy. But one of my older girls and the boy, they're actually mum and son, mum and baby. So it's really sweet.
Yeah.
I've got a little family.
Do they ever are they part of your writing routine? Do they join you, or do you have to just be alone to do that?
Oh no, definitely. My eldest always at my feet when I'm writing. And I love her to pieces. She's always with me. Almost feels like she's been my co-author because she's been
Yeah.
with me the entire step of the way. It probably sounds a little bit silly, but I just think, yeah, she's my co-author. She helped me do it. She's an angel.
I think that is so sweet, the fact that she and they, but especially her, what's she called?
Maggie.
Maggie. Yeah, yeah. Maggie's been there encouraging you, keeping your feet warm as well,
She
which is no
has,
bad
yeah,
thing.
definitely keeping me company.
Yeah. So from that moment, all those years ago, well, they're not that many years ago, but they're a good number of years ago, where you were at the Lit Fest and you heard Karen speak, to now, how have things been different than you thought they would be in becoming a published author?
Well, since meeting Karen at the Lit Fest, I mean, I attended so many different
Mm.
events and
Yeah.
talks and festivals. I even went to Foyles when I think it was when I was about 18, and I pitched to agents there. And then I signed with my agency DHH a little bit later when I think I was 19. And it's been a really sort of interesting process and journey to where I am today.
Mm. I'm gonna ask you one final question. I mean, so grateful for our time together, and it's a real thrill to celebrate. Um, Someone at this point in your life, and already, I know many people have said this about you. A book like this. But for me, it's that sense of this is somebody that has been writing for a while. Writing has been within you, and it's come to this point now for this book. So I'm really glad that we can celebrate you,
Oh, thank
uh,
you.
and celebrate So Pretty. My last question to you about this book, and it's one I often ask authors, is if you could choose an aspect, and it can either be content or process, what are you proudest of?
Um, I think I'm most proud um, of the atmosphere that I've sort of built within the story because that's such a huge element of it and of Gothic fiction. I think I'm actually most proud of the atmosphere because it's quite tricky sometimes to build that level of atmosphere and to make it feel sort of dark and mysterious and have that sort of edge there, and it can be quite tricky to build that up. So I'm quite proud of that within the story. Yeah,
Mm.
definitely.
And it should be said, not only to build it, but to maintain it, and the
Mm.
balance along the way. Um, yeah, it's a deliciously dark, beautiful piece of writing.
Oh, thank you.
No, really wish you all the best with it, Ronnie, and writing in the future. Thank you so much for our time together. I hope we get to meet in person.
Oh, yes, please. I would
Yeah,
love that. Yeah.
yeah, somewhere around the crazy world of crime thriller book festival
Yes,
thing.
we'll bump into each other.
Brilliant. Until then, all the very best, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
bye.